This is a summary of research on the cultural history and mythology of the dragon around the world. The dragon in the modern popular context is fairly uniform. It has big leathery wings, heavy scales, and a tendency to breathe fire as a self-defense mechanism. Dragons are either characterized as inherently evil and conniving, or as simple-minded animals with no moral compass. The exception to this rule tends to be in books such as Aragon or the Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern series, where dragons bond with humans and accept the human cultural experience. Dragons have been popularized in media such as TV's Game of Thrones series, books like the Harry Potter series, and movies like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. However, the modern dragon has a lot of basis in ancient legends from many cultures that often had little to no interaction. To understand why the modern dragon is how it is, we have to go back to cultures from long ago. The word dragon can be traced back to the ancient Greeks. Their word for large serpent was drakon, which was also applied to their first snake-like monsters. The Greeks also had dragon legends, but to find the first occurrence of a dragon-like creature, we have to go farther back. Quick note, while I'm using the term dragon to refer to both traditional European dragons and Asian lung dragons, many people have argued that these beasts have little to nothing in common except for a name assigned by Westerners. However, for the purposes I'm trying to do, I am attempting to look at most of the cultures that had stories of winged lizards, snakes, and so on. I'll attempt to show the duality of these two legends as well as I can, but as I do not belong to an Asian culture, I may get things wrong. Please let me know. With that said, the first dragon-like myth can be traced back to the ancient civilization of Sumer, to a text called The Exploits of Ninurta. Ninurta was a minor warrior god of the Sumerians who was sent to destroy the god Kur. Kur was causing the river to be blocked and killing the crops of the Sumerians. Kur has been portrayed as many things. The original meaning of the word is a subject of debate, but it has been translated to mountain or darkness. Kur was depicted as a snake-like beast with wings that Ninurta killed. This is the first example of dragon slaying as a heroic act of strength. There are also two other versions of this story that are less easily interpreted and less clear about Kur's aspects. The next mention of a winged reptile that we can find is in the ancient Greeks. In Greek culture, the drakon was a huge creature with fire breath, the earliest mention of fire breath as a dragon trait. This was where the tradition of a hero slaying a dragon developed into the cultural image it is today. Some of the most famous Greek heroes to slay dragons were Hercules, Bellerophon, and Jason of the Argonauts. The Greeks also liked to add multiple heads to their drakons. Many heads. Another common belief was that drakons represented the unknown in Greek culture. There were drakons on the edge of their maps in places like Ethiopia and India. The Welsh also have had a long and well-documented cultural interest in dragons, as demonstrated especially by the legend of the Welsh Red Dragon. In this story, the King of Britain, Heath, asks his brother for help dealing with a dragon fighting another foreign dragon. His brother tells him to dig a hole and put meat in it, so the dragons will fall in and fall asleep, which works because that's just how legends are. Problem solved, right? Not quite. Hundreds of years later, the exiled British king Vortigern keeps unknowingly trying to build his castle over the buried dragons, but the walls of his castle fall down every night. Taking the advice of his friendly local sorcerer, Vortigern finds an orphan boy and prepares to shower his blood on the castle walls. Real considerate sorcerer, dude. However, the boy tells him to dig a pit beneath his castle, so he does, and it releases these dragons. The red dragon, which was the domestic dragon, not the foreign dragon, eventually defeats the foreigner, symbolizing the Welsh victory over the British. This story is a source of national pride and heritage in Wales, where the red dragon occurs on their national flag. To another ancient European culture, the dragon symbolized more than just nationality. The ancient Irish, or Celts, believed that dragons, or their equivalent creatures, were from the underworld, a place where all things go to die. However, the swampy dead muck that appears so dead can also be the source of new life. The fertile swamp beds of the underworld represented abundance and wealth to the Irish, and so they assumed that these dragons, underworld creatures, would want as much wealth as they could get. This is the origin of the dragon hoarding gold trope so often used in modern dragon stories. In later medieval times, dragons became less about symbolizing strength and power, and more about being creatures of moral evil. During the Dark Ages, Christianity began to focus on the stories of horrific monsters and holy warriors in the Bible. This led to two very important dragon stories, England's St. George and the Dragon and the northern French legend of the Tarasque. St. George and the Dragon is a classic which actually originated in the European country of Georgia, but rose to popularity in the farther west places like England. In this story, the damsel in distress is going to be fed to the dragon, but luckily St. George is riding by, and he saves her by taming and killing the dragon. The The moral of this story is essentially that conversion to Christianity defeats the evil of greed and hate, as shown by the dragon. The Tarrasque is much the same story, but with Saint Martha instead of Saint George. However, Martha beguiles the dragon, beating it at its own game using her brain and wits, rather than a sword, to lead it back to the town and kill it. Influenced by the Bible's tale of the sea monster Leviathan, dragons took on a connotation for definite evil in Europe. In Northern Europe, the dragon legend also dates back quite a while, to 800 AD in the story of Beowulf. This tale tells of the Scandinavian folk hero Beowulf, who defeats the monster Grendel and its mother before finally returning to a life of adventure by battling a dragon. This is the last of Beowulf's 3 tasks, and he gives up his life in a sacrifice to kill the dragon. This is modified in later versions to reflect the Christian values of devotion and faith, but the story was originally pagan in origin. Beowulf's story had a large influence on J.R.R. Tolkien, who called him almost a Christian knight. The influence of Beowulf and his dragon can be seen in the epic character of Smaug from Tolkien's The Hobbit, a vengeful dragon who awakes when someone steals from his mounted horde. Another Scandinavian tale is that of the Lindworm. The Lindworm originated with Norse mythology, where there were said to be 2 lindworms eating the bottom of the earth tree. Another famous story of the Lindworm is Prince Lindworm, which starts out not very normal. The queen disobeys the pregnancy advice of her sorcerer advisor and gives birth to a bipedal lindworm, scales, fangs, spikes, and all. She also gives birth to a normal son, making them twins. The queen slowly gets over her trauma and begins to find hope in her courageous son. The son goes off to find a wife, but each time he does, he is stopped by a lindworm who demands that he have first choice of wife. This goes about as well as you can imagine, with the lindworm eating the wives he is given the night they are married. Eventually, the king desperately gives up his own daughter in the hope of saving her from the lindworm. This daughter goes to the same sorceress with the pregnancy advice. She tells her this: get 10 white dresses, a tub of lye, a tub of milk, and a variety of whips. She is then to force her new husband to shed his skin, and shed it again and again until he is naked. Then she must whip him with the whips that have been soaked in lye. This treatment turns him back into a human, and the two apparently live happily ever after. The Russian equivalent of these stories involves Zmei Gorinich, a 3-headed dragon with the powers of speech and trickery. This clever dragon is up against the folk hero Dobrynya Nikitich, and it looks like it's going to be a throwdown. But the dragon begs for mercy. Shocked, the hero lets him go, and is no one surprised when the dragon proceeds to capture a princess and hold her captive. To no one's surprise, they fight, and the hero wins. In the eastern half of the world, dragons evolved culturally in a very different way. Perhaps the most well-known of the eastern dragons is the Chinese lung, or long. These dragons have been around in art and stories for at least 6,000 years. The origin of this dragon is probably to do with the groups or tribal structure of early China. Each group would take a patron animal, and one of the strongest tribes, by the Yellow River, took the snake as their patron. Legend has it that each time a tribe conquered another, they would absorb part of their patron animal into their own. Thus, the powerful snake tribe took the horns of a stag, the head of a camel, the ears of a cow, and the scales of a carp. These aspects made it such a hybrid of parts that it could no longer be just a snake. The Chinese creation myth also includes a dragon. There were 4 animals that existed before time, and one of them was a dragon. When it was time to create the earth, this dragon's tail was used to sculpt the mountains and river valleys. The lung dragon was associated with wisdom and especially the power of transformation. These dragons were known for appearing in the forms of humans, birds, fish, or deer, and still maintaining their character. When China unified, the dragon also became the symbol of the emperor and his royal family. This was known as the imperial dragon. This meant all of the emperor's possessions were the dragon throne, dragon table, etc. 2 cultural traditions in China with links to the lung dragon are the Dragon Boat Festival and the Dragon Dance. The Dragon Boat Festival is held in May to commemorate the death of imperial advisor Chu Yuan. He drowned, and legends say there was a water dragon eating the rice balls thrown as offering to his spirit. Thus, the speedy dragon boats were created to outrun the water dragon, and these boats race across the water still today. The dragon dance is a complex procedure where a large dragon model is made using traditional materials and is manipulated by many dancers to give the appearance of life. This ceremony is believed to scare away evil spirits and bring good luck, which is why it is frequently associated with the Chinese New Year. Other Asian cultures that include dragons are the culture of India, Korea, and the Philippines. The Hindu mythical race, the Naga, are often associated with dragons as they are half human and half cobra, however they do not have wings. These creatures are celebrated as minor deities in Buddhism. The Korean dragon is based on the long dragon, but it is more symbolic rather than permeating the whole culture in its physical reality. The Dragon King lives in his undersea palace and is benevolent and kind, according to the Korean legend. In the Philippines, the dragon Bakunawa has a big mouth, literally. Bakunawa has been known to swallow the moon, causing lunar eclipses. The Philippines people would all run out of their houses with pots, pans, and drums and bang them to scare Bakunawa and get him to release the moon. Some other cultures that are unattached to either European or Asian tradition also imagine dragons. One such example is the serpent Aida Wedo that is curled around the world. Aida Wedo is a loa of the Ghanaian voodoo tradition, and she is prayed to for rain, guidance, and healing. Many native North American cultures also had dragons, such as the crow and the Sioux. These are more animalistic creatures with no malicious intent and simply threats to eradicate. Considering the spiritual religion of most Native American tribes, it makes sense that their dragons would resemble birds or lizards closely. The inspiration for these may have been spawned by exposed dinosaur fossils in the American West. So why did so many cultures imagine these creatures? These stories may vary widely from culture to culture, but there is always one common thread, that of the dragon. These winged reptiles have captured the human imagination for millennia, and it shows no sign of stopping. So what caused the universality of this phenomenon? Many scientists believe that dinosaur fossils could have caused ancient peoples to think of giant reptiles, especially in the American West and Chinese deserts. However, that does not explain the dragons of Europe or North America. Historian David E. Jones has argued that the human's natural instinct to avoid predators has caused cultures to conglomerate their fears of birds of prey, large mammals, or reptiles like snakes into one animal. This super predator could attack from the sky, sea, or land, like a dragon. However it occurred, the existence of dragons in so many cultures is a powerful testament to the human imagination. Even after thousands of years, we dare to imagine more, and our legends persist. Like it or not, the dragon is tied to the creativity, spirituality, and morality of the human existence. I would like to think that for as long as the human race continues, we will keep this rich cultural legend alive.